My twin sister and I were born at the same time, but we couldn't have been more different. She had fair skin and was considered beautiful by everyone. I was the opposite, with darker skin and eyes that tilted up slightly at the corners, which my dad called phoenix eyes. To him, this wasn't a good thing. He once said that a dark phoenix was a bad omen, a curse on its father that would drain the family's money. When we were 7 years old, my parents and sister moved into a new house and left me behind with my grandaunt, who was a widow. They thought she was just an ordinary poor old woman from the countryside, but they had no idea she was actually a billionaire. Years later, when my dad's business was about to go bankrupt, he came to my grandaunt begging her for money to save it. She just smiled and looked at me, asking, "Should we help him?" I simply shook my head. He had once told me that even if he died, he wouldn't want me to come to his funeral. Our first day of kindergarten was telling. The teacher, Miss Gable, asked everyone to introduce themselves. My sister Stella went up first, looking completely at ease and confident. "My name is Stella," she announced, "and my mommy and daddy say I'm the cutest, most lovable girl in the world. I can also sing and dance." She made a great first impression, getting a round of applause from the teacher and a little red flower sticker. Then it was my turn to speak. I had only just managed to stand up when a boy across the room shouted, "She's so dark!" I was so startled and scared that I couldn't get a single word out. My sister and I are fraternal twins. We had similar body types, but our faces were completely different. She was born with pale skin and large eyes with double eyelids, making her look like a perfect porcelain doll. I, on the other hand, had dark skin, monolids, and those eyes that slanted upwards at the corners. Everyone in our family said I had a fierce and mean look, like I was a bad kid from the start. My parents absolutely adored my sister. Everything she did was met with smiles and praise, which is why she grew up to be so happy and confident. For me, it was the opposite. Everything I did seemed to be wrong. I was the ugly, stupid child, the one who wasn't loved, and because of that, my personality became very shy and withdrawn. Miss Gable told the boy off for his comment and then gently tried to encourage me to say my name. But her kindness just made me feel even more afraid to speak. My name is Zara. It didn't have a beautiful meaning or represent any hopeful wishes like my sister's name did. I was just called Zara because I was the younger twin. What kind of a reason is that for a name? When school ended, it started to rain. My sister held her arms out to our dad, and he immediately lifted her up from the kindergarten gate, carrying her to the car so she wouldn't get wet. I stood there quietly, waiting for him to come back for me. Instead, I heard my mother's impatient voice from the car. "What are you just standing there for? Can't you see it's pouring?" I had no other choice but to put my small backpack over my head and run through the rain. There was a big puddle right in front of the car door, and I accidentally stepped in it. Muddy water splashed all over my pants and onto my sister's new little leather shoes. Stella immediately started to pout and complain. "My new shoes are all dirty. It's Zara's fault." From the front seats, my parents' soothing voices came. "Mommy will wipe them clean for you when we get home. It's just a pair of shoes, sweetie. Daddy will buy you an even nicer pair tomorrow." I clutched the bottom of my damp pants and quietly looked down at the ground. My pants were a little old and worn, unlike my sister, who was always dressed in brand new clothes from head to toe. My mom always told me that even though our family wasn't poor, money didn't just grow on trees, so we needed to be careful with it. I always took what she said seriously, never daring to ask for new things. But I always wondered why that rule never seemed to apply to my sister. On the drive home, my sister chattered on and on about her exciting first day of school. She even brought me up. Zara was so scared she couldn't even talk, and none of the other kids wanted to play with her. It was so embarrassing. The truth was, hardly any of the kids in our class were as talkative as my sister. Most of them were just like me, feeling nervous and quiet in a new place. I didn't understand why she always felt the need to put me down. As we stopped at a red light, my dad slowed the car and said, "They came from the same mother, so how can they be so completely different? Are you sure that paternity test was right?" My mom immediately became furious. "Do you really think I'm not going to divorce you if you keep talking like that?" "It was just a joke," he said. "Why are you getting so angry?" My mom's voice got even louder. "You're accusing me of sleeping with two different men." Of course I'm angry. She turned her head slightly and her eyes passed over me in the back seat. You and I both have double eyelids and neither of us has dark skin. Who the hell knows where this one came from? Thank God we have Stella, otherwise I'd be too embarrassed to even leave the house. Her words felt colder than the rain outside. Suddenly, a lot of things started to make sense. My dad didn't love me because he didn't think I looked like him. The paternity test had made my mom doubt me, so she held a grudge against me too. And my sister learned to put me down to make our parents like her even more. She was very smart. The car started moving again. My dad spoke up. So, have you thought about it? We can afford it. Raising one more wouldn't be a problem. My mom was clearly not on board with the idea. I just got my body back. If I have another baby in a few years, I'll feel like all I do is have children. Let's talk about it again in a couple of years. My sister's eyes lit up. She seemed to be listening to their conversation very carefully. A month after school started, the kindergarten had a parent-child event. Only one parent needed to come for each child. But my dad was busy with work, and my mom chose to be on a team with my sister. The teacher tried to get them to include me, but my mom just said, "This child is extremely shy and doesn't have any talents. There's no reason for her to participate in public events like this. It'll just save her from the embarrassment of getting on stage and being too scared to say anything." But Miss Gable was firm that no child should be left out. She personally partnered with me for all the games and competitions. For the final talent show part of the event, she dressed me up like a character from an old storybook and had me recite a classical poem. She even changed into traditional clothes herself and played a zither as my accompaniment. After I finished reciting the entire poem without a mistake, I looked proudly towards my mother in the audience. But she was busy fixing my sister's skirt and probably hadn't heard a single word I said. My sister and my mom then went on stage and sang "You Are My Sunshine" together. Stella wore a big, puffy blue dress and looked like a little fairy. Mom was in a white dress and looked gentle and beautiful. Stella's voice was clear and lovely. I saw a few mothers in the audience get emotional, hugging their own children tightly with tears in their eyes. At night, I would often think about the things my mom had said about me. She had called me a hideous thing that embarrassed her, a mean-looking child. I would often cry myself to sleep. I hugged Miss Gable and asked her with a choked voice, "Am I really that ugly?" She smelled faintly of something pleasant and sweet. "Every skin color is special," she said. "Look at all the flowers in the kindergarten's garden. If they were all the same color, wouldn't that be boring?" "But they also say my small eyes are ugly," I whispered, "that I don't look like my parents' real child." Miss Gable gently wiped the tears from my face. "You don't have small eyes, you have phoenix eyes. Your eyes are very beautiful, and even if they were small, it wouldn't matter. What other people think is beautiful is just their own opinion. It doesn't define who you are." That was the first time I had ever heard the term phoenix eyes. My eyes, which I had always hated, had a name, and it was even prettier than my own name. With Miss Gable's help, I slowly started to become less shy. One day in art class, the teacher asked us to draw animals. After class, the same boy who had made fun of me on the first day of school came up and held his drawing in front of my face. "Look," he said, "doesn't this Tibetan fox look just like you? Do you know what a Tibetan fox is? It's the ugliest fox in the world. Just like you, with your squinty eyes." This time, I didn't just stand there and let him bully me. I yelled back at him, "If I'm a fox, then you're a pig. A big, dumb, oinking pig." His face turned bright red. He glared at me, and then suddenly he grabbed the box of crayons from the table and threw them right at me. Something inside me snapped. I jumped on him, scratching and biting, and we ended up in a heap on the floor, fighting. By the time the teacher managed to pull us apart, both of our faces were covered in scratches. Near the end of the school day, my mother was called to the principal's office. Her face was set in a grim line. Before she even heard the whole story of what happened, she was forcing me to apologize and then quickly paid for the other boy's medical expenses. The teacher and the other parents seemed a little surprised. It took them a moment to understand what was happening. "Zara's mom," the teacher said, "we only asked you to come in so we could let you know what happened. We weren't asking you to pay for anything. I'm a very busy woman, teacher, my mother replied. I just want to solve this problem as quickly as possible. Since everything is taken care of, we'll be leaving now. She didn't even bother to ask if I was hurt before she grabbed my arm and rushed me out of the school. That evening, my dad came home smelling strongly of alcohol. My mom immediately started complaining to him. I was finally having a nice day shopping with my friends, and then I get a call from the kindergarten. Apparently, your dear daughter has already learned how to get into fights. What is she going to be like when she gets older? My dad squinted at me for a long time, and then he suddenly slapped me hard across the face. I fell to the floor, stunned and unable to move. My mom seemed shocked too. Her voice trembled. What was that for? You didn't have to get that angry. I was wondering why a good client of mine suddenly canceled our deal, he slurred. It's because this little jinx brought me bad luck. My dad explained to my mom that a major client he had just secured had unexpectedly canceled their contract. He had been planning to use the money from that deal to expand his factory, but now all of his plans were ruined. So he had gone to a fortune teller, who told him that he had recently upset a petty spirit and that he should avoid any conflicts or he would lose money. He was completely convinced that my fight with a classmate was the reason his business deal had fallen through. My face was numb from the slap and I couldn't speak. All I could do was cry. "What are you staring at?" he yelled. "Stop looking at me with those dead eyes. You look like a curse, you little bad luck charm." Through my tears, I managed to say, "I have phoenix eyes." "Phoenix eyes," he sneered. "You're as black as coal. You're more like a crow. Real phoenixes are red, and that's good luck. You're a dark phoenix, a complete disaster. From now on, when I'm home, you stay in your room and don't come out. I don't want to see your face." After that night, I rarely left my room and barely spoke to anyone. At kindergarten, I would just sit by myself, curled up in my chair. No matter how much Miss Gable tried to comfort me, I couldn't get my confidence back. At the end of that year, my parents' new home was finally ready. It was a large, four-bedroom apartment with a great view from the balcony that looked out over a green lake. My sister got to choose the largest of the extra bedrooms. "Mommy, I want the walls to be pink, and I want a pink bed and a pink wardrobe. The bed has to be really big so I can put all my dolls on it." My mom agreed to everything she asked for. I liked the bedroom that was across the hall from my sister's. It wasn't very big, but it had a small balcony where you could also see a small part of the lake. But I didn't dare to say anything. I just waited quietly for them to decide where I would sleep. "Mom, which room is mine?" I asked. Her smile disappeared. She looked over at my dad. My dad's voice was harsh. "You're not living here. You're going to go to your grandma's house for elementary school. We'll bring you back later." It felt like I had been punched in the chest. A dull ache spread through me and I was speechless. Why?" I stammered. "You're a child. You do what we tell you to do. No questions asked." It didn't matter that he wouldn't tell me the reason. I had already overheard them talking about having another baby next year. My dad had gone to see that fortune teller again, who had told him that a child born in the coming year would bring him great wealth. The man had also said that my features were unlucky and would bring a curse upon my father. My grandmother lived in the countryside, more than 60 miles away. If they were sending me there, they probably had no intention of ever coming back for me. For the new year, my parents took us to my grandmother's house early. Right after dinner, my mom brought up the subject of me staying there with my grandma. But my grandma refused. "Your sister-in-law is already pregnant with her second child. In a few months, I'll have to take care of my grandbaby. Where would I find the time to help you raise a child?" "How do you know it's a boy?" my mom asked. "I had someone check. It's definitely a boy. You should raise your own daughter. Don't try to leave her with me." My grandma always favored boys and absolutely doted on my uncle's family. She was never very close to me or my sister, her granddaughters. My mom sounded hurt. "Do you think I'm trying to cause you trouble on purpose? My mother-in-law passed away a long time ago. I don't have anyone to help me. I even had to hire a nanny right after giving birth. I'm only asking you because I have no other options. Zara's not a baby anymore. It wouldn't be any trouble." Can't you just help me out? My grandma's face was like a stone. My grandpa, who was sitting in the yard smoking his pipe, coughed once. Aren't you going to wash the dishes, or are you expecting me to do it? The tension in the house remained until 2 days later. Relatives came over to visit for the new year, and all the adults were smiling and laughing again. My sister and I, the mismatched twins, became the center of attention, just like we did every year. A chubby relative with a greasy hand pinched my cheek. This little face, it's not the same kind of tan that we farmers get. It's a sickly, muddy color. She looks more like a little clay doll than a healthy young girl. What are you going to do if she can't get married? The men standing around him all roared with laughter. My dad's laugh was the loudest and harshest of them all. Like a clay doll? I think she looks more like a piece of jade. A clear voice cut through the noise. I followed everyone's gaze and saw a woman sitting on a bamboo chair smoking a cigarette. Her hair was casually pinned up and her jacket was old and wrinkled, looking like something my grandmother might have worn when she was young. In the middle of the festive atmosphere, her old clothes stood out compared to everyone else's. She put out her cigarette and walked towards me. Like a piece of uncut jade, she repeated. She wiped the grease from my cheek with her thumb and then asked the men coldly, "Aren't you ashamed of yourselves making fun of a child like that?" The man who had pinched my cheek gave her a suggestive look. "When it comes to being shameless, who can compare to you, Evelyn Croft?" The men's laughter grew even louder. I had overheard my mom and grandma whispering about her earlier. This was my grandaunt, my maternal grandmother's sister-in-law. When she was young, she had been bold and wild, wearing clothes that no one else dared to wear and doing things that no one else dared to do. Because she was so beautiful, people had called her a temptress. After my granduncle married her, he left town with her, and everyone said that she had put a spell on him. No one knew what had happened to them over the years. She had come back this time to deal with the old house my granduncle had left behind, and she wouldn't say a word about her life. Based on her clothes, my grandma and mom had decided that she must be living a very hard life. "Go on, laugh," she said, her voice calm. "Laugh a little louder so Death doesn't get confused and take the wrong person." The man's face turned red with anger. "Are you cursing me to die?" He looked like he was about to start a fight, but the other men pulled him aside. "It's the new year. Let's not make a big deal out of it." The same people who had been encouraging him just a moment ago were now trying to be peacemakers. Adults were so strange. My dad looked her up and down for a moment, his eyes glinting with an idea. He asked in a probing tone, "Grandaunt, if you think she's a piece of jade, why don't you take her with you? She could keep you company." My grandaunt gave my dad a disgusted look. "You just want to make them, not raise them. Were condoms that hard to find back then?" My dad was speechless, and before he could think of a reply, she had already walked away. Someone clapped him on the back. "You've never met her before, have you? She's always like that, very sarcastic. Don't take it personally." Another relative added, looking confused, "She doesn't even have her own kids. Why would she want to raise someone else's? Besides, you don't need to use a child to get on her good side." My dad forced a smile. "Every family has its own problems. You wouldn't understand." I didn't know what problems our family had, only that he was determined to get rid of me. I went to sit by myself in a corner. The snow was thicker than usual that year. It still hadn't melted at the end of January. A cold wind blew through the courtyard, making the big red iron gate swing back and forth slightly. An image of that slender, straight-backed woman flashed in my mind. I quickly slipped out of the courtyard. No one even noticed that I had left. The cold wind stung my cheeks, but my heart was pounding with a strange kind of excitement. I straightened my back and walked with long, confident steps, just like my grandaunt, pretending that I was already a grown-up. I could go wherever I wanted and wouldn't be thrown away like a piece of trash anymore. The village alleys were confusing and twisted, and I wandered around without any destination in mind. Suddenly, something hit my head. A small bird fell to the ground in front of me. I squatted down and saw tiny ice crystals clinging to its brown feathers. I couldn't resist poking it. "It's dead." A familiar voice came from above me. My grandaunt was leaning against the railing of a rooftop, another cigarette between her fingers. She took a drag, looked off into the distance, and then looked down at me. "Just like this tree. It died a long time ago." I looked up at the withered branches of the tree that stood beside her. The bird must have fallen from it. What kind of tree is this? I asked. A persimmon tree? When did it die? I don't know. Do people die like trees? Or like birds? What I really wanted to ask was, do people who aren't loved die without anyone even noticing? But I wasn't as good with words as my sister. The question came out wrong, and I didn't know how to explain what I meant. But my grandaunt seemed to understand. What happens after you die? Why worry so much about it? The most important thing is how you live. A little bit of ash fell from her cigarette and landed on the dead bird. I couldn't help but imagine the bird as it was when it was alive, flying freely through the sky. Our lives are like a wild swan's footprint in the slushy snow, she said, looking down at me. Have you read that? Grandaunt, I'm not even 6 years old yet. She seemed to be lost in thought again. They don't want you, and you're so young. How did you end up in an even worse situation than I was? My eyes started to sting, and I rubbed them. Dad says I'm a dark phoenix, that I'm bad luck. My grandparents don't want me either. I think they're going to throw me away. My grandaunt smoked her cigarette, her face showing no emotion. After a long silence, she finally spoke. What's your name? Zara Cole. Is that supposed to be a name? I nodded and then I shook my head. I hated that name, but it was my name. She seemed amused by my reaction, and the corners of her mouth turned up in a slight smile. Then she said, I don't know how to raise a child, and I don't have much patience. All I can do is teach you what I know and give you what I have. Whether you become successful or not is up to you. Can you accept those terms? I froze for a second, but when I realized she was offering to take me with her, I was filled with joy. Yes. 2 days later, my grandaunt came to the house as she had promised. When my dad heard that she was taking me with her, he was thrilled and even generously offered to give her money for my living expenses. My mom, however, had a complicated look on her face. Grandaunt, let's exchange phone numbers and you can give us your address. That way, it'll be easier for us to visit you and Zara. My grandaunt looked at her with contempt. Keep the money. I may be an old woman, but I won't let her go hungry. She then turned to my mom. A phone number is a good idea. When you two die, she'll need to come back for the funeral. As for the address, we can talk about that if and when you ever actually decide to visit her. A flash of embarrassment crossed my mom's face. My grandaunt continued. She's with me now, so she's part of my family. She'll take my last name. Get her records transferred out of your household, and I'll handle the new registration once we get to my home. My mom seemed hesitant. So, her name will change too. If everything changes, people will think she's not my daughter anymore. A feeling of warmth spread through my chest. I gathered all my courage and said what I had been holding back for so long. I don't want to be Zara Cole, and I don't want to be your daughter. Mommy, Daddy, you have Stella, and that's enough. You don't have to come and see me in the future either. My dad let out a cold laugh. Listen to that. She's got someone to back her up, and suddenly she's got some courage. Fine. From now on, I'll pretend I never had you. Don't even talk about visiting. I could be dead, and I wouldn't want you at my funeral. That night, my grandaunt took me to her house. As soon as the New Year holiday was over, my parents went back to the city to take care of the paperwork for me. After dealing with the old house, my grandaunt took me to the city to meet them. My mom had booked a table at a restaurant to say goodbye to us, but neither of us wanted to see them. The car pulled up to the entrance of the restaurant, and my grandaunt told her assistant to go upstairs and get my transfer documents. A moment later, my parents and my sister rushed out of the restaurant. All three of them stood in front of the car, completely stunned. My grandaunt had changed into a loose, vintage-style dress and a clean white coat. She looked completely different from the rough-looking farm woman she had been just a few days ago. The only thing that hadn't changed was the cool, untamed spirit in her eyes. My grandaunt told me she lived in Boston, which was over 400 miles away. Since she had a lot to do and the village was difficult to get to, she had just driven down. While she was sorting through some old things, she had found those clothes, felt like wearing them, and put them on. She didn't care about holidays or special occasions. She just did whatever she wanted. My dad swallowed hard and asked with a fawning smile, Aunt, Aunt Evelyn, I saw this Bentley parked at the village entrance a few days ago. Is it, is it yours? And it has a Massachusetts license plate. Are you living in Boston now? My grand aunt didn't answer him. Only after she had carefully checked the documents did she speak. We have a long drive ahead of us. We'll skip dinner. My mom hurried over and stuck her head in the car window, her eyes looking watery. Zara, you have to listen to your grandaunt, okay? Don't make her angry, do you hear me? My grandaunt gave her a cold, dismissive look. Her name isn't Zara, and what she'll be called from now on is none of your business. Just then, my sister pushed her way to the front. Grandaunt Evelyn, you look so beautiful today. When I miss my sister, can I come and visit you at your house? The look of disgust in my grandaunt's eyes deepened. You have your own home. What are you doing thinking about mine? My sister was left speechless. As the car window slowly rolled up, my mother called out Zara one last time. I didn't turn my head. I just leaned gently against my grandaunt. Grandaunt Evelyn, what's my name? Iris Croft. We spent one night on the road and arrived in Boston the next afternoon. My grandaunt's home was a 3-story townhouse with a garden in the middle of the city. It was a quiet and peaceful place in the middle of all the noise and bustle, just like her, living fiercely but never quite being a part of the world. First floor or second, pick a room, she said, and don't bother me until dinner. With that, she yawned and went up to the 3rd floor. The housekeeper, Mrs. Chen, kindly gave me a tour of the house. I ended up choosing a bedroom on the 2nd floor that had a terrace overlooking the garden. Thinking about my sister's big, bright pink room, I couldn't help but feel that this was a blessing in disguise. After dinner, my grandaunt took me to her treasure room. Pick any piece of jewelry you like as a welcome gift. Like them, you're a part of this house now. I walked past display cases full of glittering gems, and my eyes finally landed on a black pearl. Grandaunt Evelyn, I like this one. She let out a rare smile. You have good taste. She took out the black pearl and placed it in my palm. An ancient legend says that a phoenix brought a pearl just like this one at the birth of an emperor. The pearl was named Yue, which is the root of your new name Iris. A piece of jewelry can be sold for a fortune to someone who appreciates it. But to someone who doesn't, even the most beautiful jade is no different from a piece of glass. That person who appreciates you can be anyone, but first and foremost, it has to be you. If other people don't treasure you, you have to treasure yourself. I held the pearl carefully in my hand. Was the legendary pearl black too? That's not important. I thought for a moment and then asked, Grandaunt Evelyn, have you read a lot of books? It's just a way to pass the time. Her eyes flickered and she looked towards the study across the hall. But it's always good to read more. She handed me a book of poetry. Take this and read it. It's okay if you don't understand it now. You will someday. Then she paused. And if you never understand it, that might be a good thing too. My grandaunt had said that she didn't have much patience, but in just a few days she had taught me more than my mother had in my entire life. That night, I lay in my bed and tried to read the poetry collection. I opened it to the page that was bookmarked, which was a poem titled Calm the Storm. The paper on this page was more worn than the others. My grandaunt must have read it many times. It said something about hearing the sound of rain beating through the forest. I didn't recognize most of the words after that. The next morning at breakfast, I asked her, Grandaunt Evelyn, what does calm the storm mean? She was flipping through a magazine and taking a sip of her black coffee. It means to walk your own path, don't listen to gossip, and don't take foolish people seriously. Then what about the part about rain beating through the forest? I was talking about the meaning of the whole poem. I nodded, only half understanding what she meant. Then I want to be a calm the storm person when I grow up. The hand that was holding her coffee cup trembled slightly and she let out a few soft coughs. I hopped off my chair, ran to her side of the table, and patted her on the back. Grandaunt Evelyn, if the coffee is too bitter, maybe we shouldn't drink it. The screen of her phone on the table suddenly lit up. It was a call from Mark Cole. My grandaunt answered the phone but didn't say anything. My father's voice came through the speaker. Aunt Evelyn, it's me, Mark. You must have arrived in Boston by now. I figured you'd be tired from the trip and need some rest, so I'm only calling now. Is Zara behaving? If she's doing anything wrong, please feel free to discipline her. We have complete confidence in you raising her. Then, I heard my mother's voice calling out to me from a distance. Zara, are you adjusting okay over there? You have to be on your best behavior at your grandaunt's house, not wild like you were at home. Be good and don't cause her any trouble. My mother was the only one who seemed to worry about me. But at home, I had always been quiet and careful, never wild. Her words just made me feel colder inside. This is her home now, my grandaunt said. She doesn't need you to teach her how to behave. After saying that, she handed the phone to me. I took a deep breath and said loudly, I'm not Zara. I'm Iris Croft, the one and only Iris Croft. Don't call again. I don't miss you at all. After I hung up the phone, I could hear my own heart pounding in my chest. A flicker of approval crossed my grandaunt's eyes before she turned back to her magazine. That September, I started elementary school at an international school. Even though I had spent 6 months studying English before starting, my conversational skills were still far behind my classmates. To make things worse, there was a boy in my class who was relentlessly mean to me. Just like the boy in kindergarten, he made fun of my eyes, calling me an ugly chimpanzee in English. I didn't want to cause any trouble for my grandaunt. Whenever he mocked me, I would silently repeat the line from the poem, "Heed not the rain beating against the leaves," in my head and walk away to do my own thing. But that only made him bolder. One day after school, he chased me all the way to the school gate, shouting, "Is Quasimodo your cousin? What backwoods village did you crawl out of? Why are you so dark, chimpanzee?" When I saw my grandaunt get out of her car, I ran and threw myself into her arms. The boy was completely unfazed. "Ooh, you think I'm scared now that your mommy's here? What are you gonna do? Hit me." My grandaunt stared at him coldly and said slowly, "Bastard." "What does that mean?" he asked. "It means your parents weren't married." "You can't say that." "Pervert," my grandaunt added. He squealed like a trapped animal. "Stop using words I don't understand." A small smile played on my grandaunt's lips. "It means you're a creep. Understand that one? I thought you were such a tough guy. You come out here making a fool of yourself with such a small vocabulary." "You old hag. Fuck you," he yelled. My grandaunt calmly replied with something in another language. He got even more agitated. What did you just call me?" "Oh, so you know who Quasimodo is, but you don't speak any French? English is so common these days. You haven't learned any other languages? You've got some work to do, kid." He gave us the middle finger and ran off, his face bright red. I hugged my grandaunt, my face full of admiration. "Grandaunt Evelyn, you're amazing. He was only picking on me because he knew my English wasn't as good as his." She set me straight, her tone serious. "I told you not to pay attention to fools, which means don't let them affect you. It doesn't mean you let them walk all over you. If you had punched that little brat, I wouldn't have said a single word against it." Remembering the time my mom was called to the principal's office, my nose tingled, and I hugged my grandaunt even tighter. I could keep their ugly words from hurting me, but I also needed to prove them wrong. I needed to shut them up with my own abilities. I threw myself into my studies and took every opportunity I could to participate in school activities. My classmates were all incredibly talented, and I wasn't quite ready to stand out among them yet, but my grandaunt saw my determination. For winter break, she rewarded me with a trip to the UK. At the British Museum, I saw countless beautiful artifacts from ancient China. The craftsmanship was even more amazing than the pieces in my grandaunt's collection. "Grandaunt Evelyn, why are they here?" "They were stolen, robbed. If they hadn't been stolen, we wouldn't have to travel so far to see them, right? Our own artistic traditions should be used in more jewelry and designs celebrated and shown around the world, not just locked away in cabinets as a conqueror's prize, with no idea when they might come home." I was sure that many designers before me were already working on this, and one day, I would join them. "Your art teacher says you have a real talent." My grandaunt always seemed to know what I was thinking. "Grandaunt Evelyn, can I take art class twice a week from now on?" She looked down at me, and for a moment she seemed to be lost in a memory. "Yes." That summer, my artwork won the gold medal in the children's category of a national painting competition. At the award ceremony, I stood in the center of the stage, holding the heavy trophy and looking out at the audience. My grandaunt was there, dressed beautifully, applauding proudly for me. I remembered that parent-child day at kindergarten, how Miss Gable had gone to so much trouble to help me perform while my own mother never once bothered to even look at me. It wasn't that I wasn't worthy of love, it was that she refused to love me. I gave an interview to a television station. Facing the cameras and the crowd, I was no longer the shy, withdrawn girl who couldn't even manage a simple introduction. My work was published in magazines and displayed at school. My classmates no longer saw me as the quiet, dark-skinned girl, but as Iris Croft, the amazing artist. When the boy made fun of me, I drew him as a ridiculous caricature and passed it around the class. When he accused me of insulting him, I retorted that he had slandered my reputation first. In an English speech competition, I told my life story. I condemned absurd superstitions, criticized parents who give birth to children but don't love them, and encouraged everyone who had suffered injustice to find their own way out and save themselves. At the time, I didn't know that my grandaunt was rich. All I knew was that I had to go with her, to leave behind the people who wished me harm. Once I set out on the path to Boston, I never once thought about turning back. I turned 18 in Boston and received an offer from a prestigious jewelry design academy in Italy. My sister surprisingly enrolled in the Boston Film Academy. Before I left the country, my family of 3 showed up at our house uninvited, carrying a pile of expensive gifts. The moment my sister saw my grandaunt, she tried to affectionately link arms with her. My grandaunt simply sidestepped her without a word. "Mrs. Chen, please prepare some tea for our guests." My dad, who had gained some weight in middle age, smiled so wide that the flesh on his cheeks pushed up to the corners of his eyes. "Aunt Evelyn, you're too kind. We're all family, no need for special tea. Water is just fine. Just fine." My mother's makeup was perfect, but it couldn't hide the tiredness in her eyes. I had heard that she had suffered several miscarriages over the years. She had even tried IVF to have a second child, but nothing had worked. As she got older, she had no choice but to give up on the idea. My father, in contrast, was doing very well. He had co-founded a cosmetics company with a friend, and it had just gone public last year. "Iris, it's been so many years. You've grown into such a young woman. I almost didn't recognize you." I didn't respond, just silently sat down next to my grandaunt. My dad gave my sister a look. "Hey, Iris, your mom and I need to talk business with your grandaunt. You kids wouldn't be interested. Why don't you show your sister around?" I could be petty. When we were kids, my sister's things were always better than mine, and all I could do was be jealous of her. Now, I wanted her to be jealous of me. So I stood up. "Stella, I'll show you my room." The moment we walked in, her eyes widened in surprise, but she tried to keep a calm expression on her face. She paced around the room, looking at everything, until she stopped in front of my glass display case and finally couldn't help but sigh. "Is all this jewelry yours?" "I'm about to go to Italy to study jewelry design. These are just practice pieces I made. They're not that great, just things I'll keep for sentimental value." Stella reluctantly tore her eyes away from the display case. "We moved again a few years ago. My room is even bigger than before, and Dad's business is getting better and better. I could have gone to study abroad if I wanted to." "Oh. But I decided to get into the entertainment industry, and you have to start building connections in college. That's why I didn't go abroad." "So you came to Boston to get close to Grandaunt Evelyn for her connections?" My grandaunt's business empire was huge, and the name Evelyn Croft was a powerful one in Boston. It's just that none of our relatives back home had ever bothered to look her up. And even if they had heard the name, they probably assumed it was someone else. Even my dad only started paying attention to her after the day I left. Now that I had called her out on her real intentions, she switched to playing the sympathy card. "You know, Mom and Dad talk about you all the time. They've always regretted not treating you better when you were living with us. I know you want their love too. So why not just let it go? Let Mom and Dad make it up to you. I'll help you take care of Grandaunt Evelyn and we can be a real family again." What do you think? A gentle breeze came through the window, flipping the pages of the open poetry book on my desk. It landed on a poem whose final line I loved the most: "Where my heart feels at peace, this is my home." As a child, I had recited poems about missing one's hometown, but it was just for a school assignment. I didn't really understand the feeling. Now, after 13 years away, I had never once missed my old home, my parents, or my sister. And even though I was about to leave Boston, I knew my heart would be at peace as I studied in Italy. Because Grandaunt Evelyn is coming with me to Italy, so you can save your little plans. My sister stared at me for a moment, her eyes flashing with anger and resentment. You really have changed since we were little. You haven't, though. You still have that same old manipulative personality. She snorted. It's not my fault Mom and Dad didn't like you. I was just going along with what they wanted. Do you really think I wanted to come and see you? If Dad didn't need Grandaunt Evelyn's investment, I wouldn't be here. So Grandaunt Evelyn is rich. Big deal. Our family isn't doing so bad either. What do you two have to be so proud of? Life is long. We'll see who comes out on top in the end. I smiled calmly, deliberately trying to provoke her. Wow, Stella, you really are spoiled. The second you get angry, you completely forget what they're trying to do downstairs. If I were to tell Grandaunt Evelyn what you just said, do you think Mom and Dad's trip here will have been for nothing? I quickly turned and headed downstairs, and she scrambled to follow me. But she wasn't fast enough. I repeated her words exactly as she had said them, and my parents' faces went pale. My grandaunt gave me an appreciative look and then said coldly, "In that case, you can find someone else to invest. Mrs. Chen, please see our guests out." My parents jumped to their feet, but Mrs. Chen blocked their path. A security guard came in and picked up the gifts they had brought. "This way, please." My dad clenched his fists and shot a furious look at my sister, who immediately looked terrified and started to cry. The force of his slap all those years ago had been brutal. This time it was his precious, perfect daughter who had ruined his plans. I wondered if he would have the heart to be as harsh with her. The three of them were escorted out of the house. My grandaunt sighed. That couple is relentless. "Thank you for saving me the trouble," I said. I helped her slowly up the stairs. What can I say? Great minds think alike. During my 4 years in Italy with my grandaunt, I would occasionally see news about my sister online. She debuted on a reality competition show using Stella as her stage name. A year later, her group disbanded, and she transitioned into acting. With her conventionally pretty looks, her first role was a minor success. My dad seized the opportunity, making her the face of his company's products, and both of them profited from it. The three of them even appeared on a talk show together, putting on a big show of how happy and loving their family was. Whenever I scrolled past news about them, I would just smile. My life in that small town felt like a distant dream. Whether the dream was a happy one or a sad one, it no longer had anything to do with me. As graduation approached, I poured all of my energy into my final project. The piece was a brooch titled "Footprints in the Snow." The goose feathers were naturally shed parrot feathers, crafted in a traditional style using iridescent feathers. A black pearl with a peacock green luster was set into the body of the bird. It was both my graduation project and a 72nd birthday gift for my grandaunt. That New Year's all those years ago, I had picked up the frozen bird and buried it before leaving my grandaunt's old home. And my grandaunt had picked me up. That summer, the soul she had picked up finally blossomed. I signed with an Italian jewelry brand and officially became a designer. 2 years later, I returned to Boston and began working on creating my own brand. When they heard that we were back, my father and sister made a special trip to visit us. My father had opened a branch office in Boston and was full of himself. A complete change from his groveling 5 years earlier. "Aunt Evelyn, I offered you a chance to invest back then. It's a real shame you didn't take it." My grandaunt pushed her reading glasses up her nose and looked at him like he was an idiot. "I may not have made money on that deal, but I have no regrets. In fact, I could make it so that you can't make any money at all. Do you believe me?" My sister immediately jumped to our father's defense. "Grandaunt Evelyn, you can't say that. We came here today out of respect for our family ties to discuss another partnership. You may be retired, but Iris has only been working for 2 years. She has a long road ahead of her. What's wrong with giving her another safety net? My grand aunt laughed twice. All bark and no bite. Are you people really the kind of safety net anyone can rely on? With that, she looked at me. I took the hint. Mrs. Chen, call security. See them out. That night, I was idly scrolling through videos when I saw my sister appear on a live stream from my dad's company, so I stopped to watch. She was arrogant and condescending, her interactions with the host dismissive. She couldn't even remember her lines when introducing the products, her eyes constantly darting to the side. When a viewer asked about her lipstick shade, she just passed the question off to the host. Her attitude angered the audience, and someone commented, "The products are so expensive and the host has a sour face. Does she even want to sell anything?" My sister was instantly triggered. You think $100 is expensive? Have you ever considered that maybe you're the problem? When you only make pocket change, of course everything seems expensive. The host standing next to her looked horrified. The comment section exploded. But my sister just looked disdainful and continued to argue with thousands of viewers. You think the big brands are a better deal for the quantity? But we're an American brand. Shouldn't you spend a little to support your own country? You don't think it's worth the price? The truth is, you don't think you're worthy of something at this price. You think ordinary people don't make money as easily as I do. Have you ever considered that maybe you're just not trying hard enough? I have to act and do these live streams. I work way harder than you, okay? The host tried several times to intervene, but she couldn't get a word in. Finally, someone ran up holding a phone. "Stella, it's Mr. Cole on the phone." Only then did she leave the camera's view. The incident quickly went viral and was soon condemned by major news outlets. My dad appeared with my sister to issue a public apology, their words humble and their tears flowing. But the public wasn't buying it. People joked that my sister's acting skills were top-notch and that she had chosen the right career. My dad had invested heavily in physical stores across the country, hoping to cash in when her new drama aired, but now, not only were his existing store counters empty, but he was also facing a massive surplus of inventory. The grand openings of the new stores were postponed indefinitely. The other brands my sister endorsed were also caught in the fallout. They were hit with a wave of returns and were mistakenly associated with my dad's company, leading to a barrage of online hate. My dad's company's losses mounted and its stock plummeted. My sister, burdened with huge penalties for breach of contract and unable to find work, soon posted a photo of a depression diagnosis on her social media. 2 months after the incident, my parents and sister showed up at our door again. This time, they came empty-handed. "Aunt Evelyn, you're truly the only one who can help our family this time. If you're willing to help, I'll do anything you ask." My sister stood to the side, silently wiping away tears. Without her elaborate makeup, she looked completely exhausted. Seeing my grandaunt's impassive face, my father kicked my sister, who cried out in pain and dropped to her knees. He then knelt beside her in front of my grandaunt. "Aunt Evelyn, if you'll just help us, I won't just kneel. I'll bang my head on the floor." "Mark!" my mother cried out anxiously. She quickly pulled a box from her handbag and pressed it into my hands. "Iris, this is the ring you designed. I bought it secretly. When I look at it, it's like I'm looking at you. But if it really comes to the worst, we'll have to sell this too to pay off the debts. Iris, please be kind. I want to keep this ring. Can you help me?" The ring was indeed one of my designs. "But don't you think it's a little too late for all this?" She shook her head, her face streaked with tears. "Growing up, I never had anyone to look out for me. I had to look out for myself. I know I was selfish. I only thought about myself and never considered your feelings. I'm apologizing to you now. I've missed you so much all these years." My father crawled on his knees toward me. "Iris, at the end of the day, we never let you go hungry or cold. If you have any gratitude for those years, you can't just stand by and watch us sink." My grandaunt lit a cigarette and asked me, "Want to save them?" I shook my head. He once said that even if he died, he wouldn't want me at his funeral. Iris, I met my father's gaze. But since you claim I owe you a debt of gratitude, let's just settle all our debts, shall we? Your properties and cars will surely be seized to pay off your debts. You won't be staying in Boston then. I'll pay for your plane tickets back home, at full fare. Oh, for housing, we'll use a standard two-bedroom apartment as the benchmark, and I'll cover 1 year's rent. Let's calculate it now. I'll transfer you the money, and we'll be even. If you don't agree, then you can hold on to that debt of gratitude forever. My father opened his mouth to speak several times, but nothing came out. Finally, he whispered, I agree. I agree. Their dramatic scene left a heavy, uncomfortable feeling in the air. After they left, I couldn't help but get up and open all the windows. Iris, my grandaunt suddenly spoke. I'm a little cold. Let's close them. I hurried back to the sofa and touched her forehead. How can you be cold on such a sunny day? Are you feeling unwell anywhere else? Her serene smile sent a wave of panic through me. We always had a way of understanding each other without words. But this time, I prayed I was wrong. She took my hand and led me to the study, where she took out a medical report from a drawer. Late-stage breast cancer. My hands trembled. My throat felt like it was closing up. It took all my strength to force out the words. It can be cured. It can definitely be cured. My grandaunt nonchalantly opened her cigarette case. I've lived over 70 years, a few more don't matter. I snatched it from her hand. You know you're sick and you're still smoking. Why do you have to be so difficult? She ignored me and turned to open the liquor cabinet. I moved to grab the bottle, but she anticipated my move. There's just a little left, 1 glass for each of us. I held the glass, unable to swallow while my grandaunt savored her drink. Have you thought of a name for your brand yet? Sojourn. Life is a journey against the wind, and I too am a traveler. You've read the books I gave you well. My grandaunt gently clinked her glass against mine and finished the last of her drink. We continued to live as we always had. But every night, I started sleeping in the same bed as my grandaunt. She began waking up more frequently during the night, and her craving for cigarettes grew stronger. Sometimes she had nightmares. She would murmur my granduncle's name and sob like a child. Growing up, she had shown me countless gifts that my granduncle had given her. She remembered the year she received them and the circumstances surrounding them, but she never told me their story. When I couldn't help but ask, she would always dismiss me with a lazy wave of her hand. If you're interested in stories, go find a novel to read. As I got older, I began to understand the flicker of pain that would cross her eyes, and I stopped pressing her to revisit the past. Another late night, my grandaunt got up and went to the study, opening the poetry collection on her desk. The pages of this one were soft and yellowed, much more worn than the one she'd given me. The bookmark inside was a photo of my granduncle in his youth. She stared at the photo for a while, lost in thought. Then, she began to speak slowly. I never went to school. I couldn't read. It was your granduncle who taught me, little by little. He gave me a copy of Dream of the Red Chamber. In between my chores, I'd sit on the edge of the fields and read it slowly. If there was something I didn't understand, I would ask him. Later, those books became poison. We weren't allowed to read them. They found the books in my house and dragged me out for public criticism sessions. My looks, my clothes, they were criticized too. I wore dresses that I sewed myself. I was born with this face. But they insisted I was a temptress, a demon. So the books I read had to be poisonous too. Your granduncle's father got wind of it beforehand and burned all the books in their house. But your own grandmother, resentful that they had never let her study, had secretly hidden one of his books. She reported him. His family had no choice but to publicly disown him. It's funny because of that, there wasn't much opposition when we got married. As soon as the turmoil ended, your granduncle's parents passed away one after another. I became the only person he had left in the world. Later, he got into college and moved to the city. After he graduated, he finally brought me with him. This poetry collection was his birthday gift to me that year. Then he quit his job, and we came to Boston to build a life. We caught the right wave, and it's not an exaggeration to say we became rich overnight. We struck while the iron was hot, worked our butts off, and lived freely and fully for 20 years. The year after your granduncle died, I went back to the old village. Dealing with the house was secondary. The main reason was to donate to the local school. I didn't need any publicity, so I told them to keep it quiet. As long as the job got done, that was enough. Even though we ended up doing well, we never had children. We were pessimistic about the world. We didn't have the courage to bring a child into it, to have them face the unpredictable decades ahead. But we still lived with all our might. After all, we were already here. I fought back my tears. I listened quietly until she finished. As she steadied herself on the edge of the desk, I rushed to support her. My grandaunt clutched the photograph tightly and slowly made her way back to bed. On the faded photo, my granduncle leaned against a car in a gray suit. His phoenix eyes looked straight at the camera, a confident smile on his lips. In all those moments when my grandaunt would look at me and seem to drift away, her mind must have been filled with a youth as potent as strong liquor. She folded her hands and pressed the photograph to her chest. Then she smiled, closed her eyes, and didn't say another word. That story was her farewell to me. My grandaunt had arranged her affairs long ago. She left me her company shares and this house. The rest of her fortune, she asked me to donate to schools in impoverished mountain regions across the country. Every year, I make time to personally visit these places, allocating funds based on their specific needs and appointing someone to oversee the implementation of the projects. In the winter of the 5th year after her passing, I came to another small mountain village to donate a batch of multimedia equipment to the school. The school building that my grandaunt had originally funded had just been repainted. You couldn't see any signs of its age. It was as fresh and new as the lives of these children. As I left the school, the snow began to fall more heavily, covering my footprints in the ground. I remembered that day long ago when I had walked through the alley, mimicking my grandaunt's stride, my heart full of anticipation for growing up. I had finally become the person I'd hoped to be, but Grandaunt Evelyn was no longer by my side. But in a way, I had become her. No matter how fierce the storms to come, I would walk on, head held high,